listening to our podcast, the Slowpoke Travel Podcast. We hope you enjoy our podcast. The podcast starts right now. Slowpoke Travel Podcast with Buck and Camera Girl. Ta-da!
Welcome to the Slowpoke Travel Podcast with Camera Girl and
Buck.
And in today's episode, Buck and Camera Girl are going to talk about a lifestyle issue, specifically looking at changing jobs. But before we get into that, we're going to have Buck do our commercial, and we're going to talk through a couple of comments that we've received. Take it away, Buck.
So we'll start with the commercial, which is for Camera Girl and myself. We have a Patreon account, so Patreon. You can also PayPal us, so if you don't want to do Patreon, you can do PayPal, and that's it. We don't have anything to sell, but hopefully we will one day. We appreciate you doing all the likes and subscribing and sharing and reviewing and anything you can do to assist us making this podcast a success, or our videos and blah, blah, blah. Helps us out a lot, so we really appreciate it. And that is the commercial.
Great.
So take it away.
Well, next we're going to comments, right?
Oh, that's right.
I like that we start with comments.
I'm still over here. So yeah, I got a couple of comments here. This one here is from our travel planning one, and this is from Novella West. And she writes, I can relate to this conversation, where we're talking about our plans for this winter, potential plans. And she says, it sounds very familiar to the convos I have with my husband. We're often frustrated with how expensive the U.S. is and talk about strategies to make it work. We long for a better lifestyle. We feel like outsiders in this culture. We don't care about stuff and having the latest and greatest thing. We find ourselves always dreaming of some other place, often other countries, that might feel like a better fit. The pandemic has made all that even more difficult. Traveling anywhere outside the country is a no-go for us until COVID is more contained. For now, it's Saturday, and I'm just trying to get through this day, entertaining a rambunctious 4-year-old and hoping my husband won't quit his horrible corporate job today. Novella is talking about, how we were having a conversation about what we might do, in the coming months. And that's a conversation we're always having. That's going to be a different conversation depending on your situation. Novella has a child and a husband who's got a established job, so like we don't have established jobs
anymore, but that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Spoiler alert. There's lots of people who are mavericks and they run out and they do the first thing they think of and it works out for them, or it doesn't and they just tumble and move on. But I agree, it's scary. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's all juggling. Even if you have a traditional lifestyle, you're juggling.
Yeah, that's right.
But the more moving parts you have, the more balls you got to juggle. People can juggle a lot of balls.
Okay, let's move on to the next comment.
I can't say juggle a lot of balls without it sounding like I'm 14 years old. No matter what I do.
Well, I'm afraid I was doing the same thing. I was like,
that's good. Okay. That's why we're compatible. Here's a comment from Single File. This is on our You Clue It podcast from last week. It says, you are willing to spend winter in a cold climate. Didn't know that because I thought you were sun seekers. But that generally enlarges your choices of locations and houses. Another cool video, thanks. Single File thought we were sun seekers. I'm sort of a sun avoider.
Yeah, I was going to say, when we first got to Seattle, I really had an issue with not having sun. You were so thrilled with all the gray, and after 2 months, I had to go visit friends in the sunshine because I was...
But I am a snow avoider. You Clue didn't have enough snow to speak of. Being in Seattle, being up in the Northwest, on the coast or near the coast, I can live places that are cold. Or definitely cooler. But snow, I only wanted small increments because I lived a lot with snow. Not a lot, but I lived enough with snow because I've worked at some snowmobile resorts, ski resort type places. Right. One place I worked, the average snowfall was 600 inches a year. Not 600 inches a year, 600 inches, within a 3 or 4 month period, whatever the winter season was. And I mean, that's... there was a full-time crew just to manage the snow. So, I mean, it was a great experience, but that was enough snow. So definitely not sun seekers, but snow avoiders.
Comment. Yeah, but thanks for the comment.
Now here's one from Shauna Melton. Shauna writes, just wondering, how come y'all don't get a motorhome or a travel trailer to stay in when you're between house sits? We have a small little motorhome that we greatly enjoy.
There's a lot of people who do that.
I like the idea of it. I want to see that. What's that Frances McDormand movie that's out? That sort of looks like.
Nomadville or Nomad.
Yeah, and I've seen documentaries,
I want to read
with
the
people
book.
that are sort of living off the grid a little bit.
Yes. Like I liked hiking. That was even less than, you had less than this. However, I also like that we have the option if we want to, between places, stay in hotels, we can. Rather than a little space. I don't know.
In my answer to her comment, I talked about my lack of mechanical skills. I would.
That's a very
I would
good
have
point.
I would be clueless. I'm nervous driving around our little Toyota. If something goes wrong with that, I'm like, camera girl, I need you to pop the trunk, pull out your tools, and fix this problem.
But you know what? Even though you're right, neither of us have enough mechanical knowledge, which is embarrassing because my father and brother could have taught me a lot more. But what was the book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
Yeah.
We could learn as we go.
Yeah, I loved that book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I read that when I was 26 years old. The first time I was hiking on the Appalachian Trail, I found that in a shelter, and I read that because that's the kind of book people take out to the woods and read.
It's a great book.
It's a fantastic book. I haven't read it. I think I reread it, but I think even when I reread it, I think I was younger than 30. So I don't know. I'd be curious to how it would read right now.
Well, but it's a fun story, a simple story, and it's got these great life parables. His buddy had the real fancy bike, but he didn't know how to, and didn't know how to fix it.
I can't remember a lot of specifics about it, but I do remember he did talk about education and how a lot of higher education is a waste of time. And that's what appealed to me because I just graduated from high school. I took a few hours at community college, but it wasn't for me. It sort of fed into my notion that higher education was a bunch of hoo-ha.
But I think, again, it depends on people. If it gives you a little more discipline. I think you're right. You have stayed curious. You're a bright person. You didn't need someone else to teach you how to read things, how to research, how to figure things out in your life. And I think some of us, a few more years of trying to figure some of that out. It's not all bad.
Yeah, I think higher education is a good thing if you're actually have
people.
a focus and a goal in mind. But this whole thing of getting out of high school and then just going piddling away 4 years with no direction or no idea or no plan, and then accumulating a bunch of debt.
Well, that's what I did.
But
I think everybody has to make, not mistakes, but you make decisions that you realize, I probably took a more circuitous route.
But that education served you because it enabled you to become a government drone for several decades.
So we have considered it.
I like little road trips. I don't think I would want to do it for an extended period of time. I'm not a huge fan of driving as it is.
That's true.
You are
not.
I'm a mess because we've had to rent a few U-Hauls in the last few years to help people move.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I'm psychologically distraught during the whole process.
You're also conscientious. But you are right. You are. If I could not ride with you, that would be okay too.
Or we've gone car shopping. How many times? Maybe twice or 3 times in our life. And we'll go look at cars, and she'll be looking at some car, and I'm like, like a mid-size, whatever. Not even a big car, but I'm always like, let's get something smaller. I always want the smallest.
And you wear me down so
I don't
far.
want a smart car, but I want
you
something
wear me down.
dinky. I want something I can park. I want something that is low-key. Some drunk guy goes by a car and then knees the door in. I can just come out and go, hey, look, our car's got a little more personality. I'm not going to be bothered by it. I just want a very nondescript car.
Anyway,
Camera girl wants a convertible.
Oh, I'm getting a convertible. But thanks for the comments. We really enjoy reading them.
Oh, Camera girl's going to take the lead on this.
Changing jobs. So sometimes the podcast we talk about destinations, but today it's more about lifestyle. And specifically about changing jobs, because everybody at some point has that decision to make, different ages. It's not just a young person decision about changing jobs. I'm not talking about retiring, I'm talking about changing jobs. So what brought the topic of changing jobs to mind right now is all of the changes that COVID has brought. After the first few months, and there was just that major layoff of people, In April 2020, when COVID was first coming out strong, the U.S. unemployment rate increased by 10.3% to 14.7%, which is the highest rate and the largest month-to-month increase since 1948, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics was keeping records. So this is after the Great Depression, but anyway, since they were keeping records. So that was when it first started. But what was even more surprising to me was in the U.S., 4 million people quit their jobs, not were laid off, in April 2021, so this year. That was also a record high. And it appears that over 700,000 people who quit in April worked in the leisure and hospitality industries, so hotels, bars, restaurants, theme parks, and entertainment.
Why would people have quit in April 2021?
COVID, it rocked our worlds in a whole bunch of ways. And for a lot of people, either they were shoved out of a job and then they had all kind of issues. But what was also interesting is then there was this major voluntary exodus. And there's no doubt about it. Some people, it's not for great reasons. The challenges that were wrought by COVID continue to rock their worlds. But for a lot of people, these job changes are voluntary. They just made different life priorities. People started deciding, I want to spend more time with my family. I'm not as interested in the big house. I'm not, you can talk about it in a variety of ways. Some wanted better pay. They started realizing, I can make some changes and I don't want to work quite this hard for 70, 80 hours a week for no money. Because, the minimum wage issue is still huge in this country. It's not just people deciding, I don't want to work. It's, I want to be able to live, so besides working. And that's what was interesting to me. The more I read, some of the why was people made voluntary decisions and said, I want less work hours. I'm willing to have fewer things for a richer life. So when I started reading more about that as a larger group of people making that decision, so on that macro level, it made me think on a micro level. There were 2 times in my life that I made voluntary job changes. And the one was after 20 plus years of working in public health and social services, living in a single place for a long period of time, made the decision to move around with you to interesting places, to gather experiences, and see if we could make it work without building financial security being the only goal. I couldn't get that out of my mind entirely, like you can, but sometimes. And a big motivator. Security. Well, you're right. It is. It's a little more tenuous than you might think. But anyway, a big motivator for me at that point was I couldn't seem to get the work-life balance right. I was working 1 million hours. And not that I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I enjoyed a lot of what I was doing. It just wasn't balanced. And when we moved to Seattle, I remember I was interviewing for a part-time job and somebody asked me why I was making these changes. And I told them I felt like the horse from the book Animal Farm. And I didn't want to end up in the glue factory at the end. I just felt like I was running along doing what, I was told to do, and this looks good, and okay, I'll do this too.
The horse from Animal Farm, didn't he win the Kentucky Derby though? He was a big star.
No.
He got like a lifetime supply of apples.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was the first voluntary change that I'd made. So that was one voluntary change. And the second was about 5 years later when we decided we'd been in Seattle and we're going to try seeing if we can work for ourselves and make a life out of that. And house sitting played a big role in that to offset some of our costs because lodging and utilities are a big cost.
You think those were the 2 big career changes in your life? Is when you finished working at your government job and then when you finished working for other
people. Working for other people.
Okay.
So working for other people in Seattle, and we decided we were going to try to see, and again, we had a little bit of a buffer, which
so you're in your mid-50s, and you've had 2 major job transitions in your life, and both of those happened in the last 10 years, 12 years.
Yes, which is very different than people who are younger than we are. I think now the job market is not as stable. I don't think it's a bad thing when you stay at a job for a couple of years and you move on, or it's not the same. So you're right. Again, I wasn't adventurous. And in fact, I think a podcast would be interesting in the future for you to talk about some of your motivations for how you made job decisions, because you weren't as risk averse. You did a lot more things that I remember, some of the things that you did.
Well, I read a lot of books when I was a kid. I read a lot of adventure books. I read a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs. I read a lot of Jack London. I read a lot of adventure memoirs.
Yeah.
I read a lot of books of interesting people doing interesting things, and I wanted to do that. And I haven't even come close to doing anything like that.
You haven't done anything close, but you know what, Buck?
That's what I aspire to.
And you weren't afraid to make mistakes. I mean, we were just laughing this morning about...
No, in fact, if I'm not making mistakes, I'm not comfortable. Like, I made many mistakes just today, and it just feels right.
No, but at a time where, I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? And what should I be doing? Looking more externally, not to get too philosophical. And I don't think that's where you find the happiness. I remember rolling my eyes when we were taking you down to the Everglades, thinking, oh, he is not prepared.
One time in my life, I got a canoe and I was going to go paddle around South Florida and live in the Everglades on different islands. I was just going to camp on little sandy shoals and live the life. Talk about a sun seeker. I was going to be like the guy on the Mosquito Coast. But when I got down there and I saw how many mosquitoes there were, and it was kind of hot, and I got that sand in my shoes, and I was like, let's go to plan B.
Yeah, he was like, y'all take me back, and I'm just going to go hiking again.
Yeah.
But and I remember at the time thinking, but I think about it now, and at least you were trying to figure things out, gather information, be open, but I couldn't see it like that. At the time, I was just like, oh, how irresponsible. But it wasn't. You weren't hurting anybody else. Mm-mm. I mean, we didn't mind taking you. It was still a fun trip, but it was sort of funny. So what I wanted to do was to talk a bit about things that can help you make a job change if you think that's something that would help with a life balance. So things that do help. And we've already talked about a few of those things. Like you said, research. And now, like you said with books, you can read books. Now, if you're reading a verse, which I've now met a lot of really bright people who are reading a verse, which is interesting to me, having a mother who is a librarian.
The internet is definitely inspiring, because a lot of stuff that we're doing now is inspired by things that we've seen on the internet. Just people, especially on YouTube. I mean, we have a travel channel. We're making videos. We're just regular people. And we watched people like that. So that has planted the idea that we can do that in our heads, and that's what we've been doing.
Figuring out a little bit of a jumping off spot for most people is a good starting point to just sort of research a little bit. But also, I think staying open and curious and flexible, which is not natural for a lot of us, but I think that is key wherever you start, and that mistakes really are okay. Even if, yes, other people see them and they're giving you their 2 cents about them, I don't think that's a bad skill to build up.
I don't know. A lot of what you're saying is very vague, though. Open, curious. You just have to have a concrete plan, or you have to have a concrete idea. You find something that interests you and say, okay, I want to do this. Mm-hmm. And then, well, how can you make that happen? So you just have a goal in mind, and you just work toward that goal. And it doesn't have to be...
That sounds like a lot of work.
A big goal. It's not a lot of work, because you cut out most of the work when you make a decision. It's like me. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was a young person and I was working in a grocery store. And then I read a book, I think it was called A Walk Across America by some guy, Jenkins maybe. I saw an article in USA Today about the Appalachian Trail, and I read a book by Ed Garvey about the Appalachian Trail. And I said, okay, well, I want to hike the Appalachian Trail. And so I took the steps that I needed to do to make that happen, which, meant, quitting my job, getting the gear I needed to do it, having a little bit of money in my pocket to sustain me through the trip. And that was it. And then I was gone. Another time in my life, I thought, I want to work on a boat. So how do you get a job on a boat? I got some books. This was before the internet. I got books, with titles like How to Get a Job on a Boat. And then I sent off letters and all kinds of stuff to different boats. and I got a job on a boat. And it was a terrible job. In fact, I worked on 3 different boats, and I don't recommend it. But I was waiting tables, which isn't the greatest thing to do on a boat.
Well, you weren't on a cruise ship. You were on a paddle boat in the Mississippi.
It was kind of a cruise ship. It was the same thing, and they went off for cruises, sometimes 7-day cruises. It didn't really matter because you were on a boat.
You were on a boat.
You never got on land, so other people got off and on, but you were stuck on the boat. Another time I thought, well, I want to go work above the Arctic Circle. I thought I wanted to go to the Arctic. And I got a job working above the Arctic Circle. And it was a great place, interesting. I didn't do it for very long. Again, like the boat. It was a fantastic experience. And I did that working in a kitchen. Working in kitchens and restaurants, that's how I've had a lot of experiences. I wanted to live in New Orleans for a while. I lived in Louisiana when I was a little kid, but it was North Louisiana. But I had a kind of a romantic idea about New Orleans. So I spent a big chunk of my time in New Orleans when I was a young person because I wanted to experience that. And I always wanted to go to Mexico, and then we made that happen last year.
Oh, we're going back to Mexico.
Yeah, I wanted to go to South America. And you got to pick things and think of things. I read another book one time called Arctic Daughter, something about a lady that homesteaded up in Alaska. And that's probably what made me want to go up to Alaska. But you just read books and you get inspired, and then if something takes a hold in your imagination, or if it becomes a compelling goal, then you can make that happen with concrete steps. I don't know what those steps are. It's going to depend on the individual and what your situation is now. But by thinking about something you want to do, then once you have that, then you can figure out the steps.
See, I think that's interesting. I've never heard you say it quite like that. And I think about, you're talking about steps, but like right now, our life is pretty ambiguous. Well, it isn't in terms of, as you say, you want to be in interesting destinations. That's a key part of a rich life for you. But we don't know where the next place is going to be.
Yeah, but we're just at a stage in our life where we know we want to have different experiences. Like when we left, we were in Tallahassee for a long time, as you were wrapping up your job there. We knew when we left Tallahassee, we were going to go live in a city. That was our goal. We said we'll go live in an urban environment. At one point, I was thinking about living in Seattle. That was after I left Alaska and I was down in Seattle. And I thought, I could live here. I'd lived in New Orleans for a long time. I lived in a very walkable part of New Orleans. When we left Seattle, our goal was to find a metropolitan area where we could live an urban lifestyle.
Oh, when we left Tallahassee. Sorry.
Yes, when we left Tallahassee. We checked out Washington, D.C., decided it was too expensive and it was too crowded and it just didn't work. We spent a couple weeks there and nothing fell into place. We were just going to have to work too hard to make it work in Washington, D.C. So we just drove across the country and we said we'll start in Seattle and we'll work our way down the West Coast. We'll go to Seattle, we'll go to Portland, we'll go to San Francisco, we'll go to Los Angeles, we'll go to San Diego, and we'll see if we can make it work. That was just our loosey-goosey goal. We got to Seattle, boom, it worked. And although our goal was just to stay in a city for 1 year, we ended up staying there for 5 years. And then when we left there, our goal was to travel around and get some more experiences. It was a little more vague, but at that time, I think by the time we left Seattle, I had already been making videos on YouTube for almost 10 years.
Yep.
So we did have some online income at that point. We had a website that we were working on. So not a lot coming in from our online endeavors, but enough to where if we structured our budgets just right, we could make it work. So then when we left Seattle and discovered house sitting, it was like, wow, with house sitting and our online income, that gives us the freedom to travel to a lot more places than we thought we could. We had a lot more options all of a sudden if we built them around house sits. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been kind of looking at house sitting and sort of, as a house sit becomes available, think, is this something that we're interested in? Can we make this work? And we've been doing that. So we've been living in more expensive places because of house sitting. Now, when we were in Mexico, we were able to make it work without house sitting.
Right.
Although we did house sit in Mexico for a short period of time. It wasn't necessary because the cost of living, it was so much less there. Let me wrap this up by saying what our goals are right now are just to have experiences. that are interesting and different. So as we see house sits, like we've been talking the last couple of days, there's a house sit just outside of Philadelphia that we're very interested in, or we had a little bit of a discussion, and we were online looking at different things and different options because that had an appeal to us. But we're not going to apply for that. We're not going in that direction. But that was something that appealed to us, and so we focused on it. But now we've decided not to. So the next house that pops up, we'll have a discussion about that. We'll see what happens.
What's interesting is if you travel with somebody, you are right. We are both interested in different experiences. However, you and I are different. A core piece for me is, and it's this weird balance. I mean, I'm more of an introvert, meaning, I want my quiet time, but I want experiences with people that I've already known, I want to be able to reconnect with, and of course, new people. And for me, it works out because the destination, yes, I want to see some different places, but it's not the priority it is for you. And another difference, which we've made work out, is from the beginning, I was more the money person in terms of I want a little more of a financial buffer. And again, we're flexible with each other, but also, I'm going to bring this up. I also have a psychological pacifier that has helped me as we sort of go round and round. And those of you that are not watching the video, Buck could not help but grimace. I have a storage unit. I have my grandma's curios, some things of my dad, blah, 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 that I just didn't want to part with. That has made everything easier for me.
What is storage? Do you even know what that is? I looked up the definition of storage.
Oh my God.
In the dictionary. Do you know what it said?
What did it say?
It didn't say anything. It was just a picture of an anchor.
But I bring that up only because you have to figure out for you as a person, not what 12 million other people would tell you that's dumb, find a way around it. And maybe I will at some point. But I've got to figure it out at my own pace. And
I think you worded it right. You said it's a pacifier. Storage is like a pacifier.
It's a luxury.
Because I can understand that, because when I was like 1 or maybe 2 years old, or I might have had a pacifier. So I can understand that mindset.
You, who for many decades would have a physical shaking start if you thought you had to have any responsibility at all.
Oh, we're not going to be able to do this podcast if you're going to use the R word.
The R word, exactly. Now, don't get me wrong. When it really comes down to it, you're a person to have during a storm. And that's what I came to learn too. But you can just
I like life being streamlined. And, a lot of drag comes from responsibility.
So we're different.
Not having possessions is very liberating.
Okay, Buck.
It's very freeing.
You're right. I brought it up. I don't disagree that the stuff is not important. And yes, it is. It's a pacifier. So
the cliche is you don't own your stuff owns you. That is just a stone cold fact.
Don't go there with me. But anyway, another thing, a general reason why I wanted to make changes was I didn't want life to get too stagnant, and I didn't want it to just be fear of I won't be able to pay for stuff. Fear of, what if I don't know what to do in a situation? Well, that's ridiculous. There's always going to be those kinds of things. And so anyway, that was another motivator
it's
for me.
It's just easier to do anything if you don't have crap to take care of. I heard a line the other day, or I read a line somewhere that said, if you can touch it, it won't make you happy. Anything that you can pick up, anything that you can touch is not
I did bring this
the
up.
source of happiness.
However, it gives you a motivation to say, okay, I feel X about this thing. How can I get to that feeling of X without so many things? I do agree with you, but can I be satisfied? Can I be content a variety of moments of my life because I'm being true to myself? You're right. So it doesn't have to be a convertible car. It doesn't have to be a McMansion. It doesn't have to be whatever. I think things can help you to realize, I like that feeling. How do I get that feeling? Yeah, without that thing. But I wanted to talk a little bit too about online options that can help you pivot toward more,
What do you mean, online options for making a living and traveling?
for more employment autonomy.
I'd like to hear about these because I sure don't know them.
Yes, you do.
Do I?
I think we all know about them, but you don't think about, oh, I haven't really considered this as part of our toolkit or whatever. And there isn't one way to make it work.
Yeah, we're trying to make it work. We're trying to add tools to the toolkit, but I feel like our toolkit is very empty. I mean, we're making it work, but we don't have a lot of tools.
See, and I feel like you're just getting restless because things we've been able to make work, you want to now build. And I think that's a natural part of evolution is, okay, I got this, now I want this other thing. I don't think you ever quit wanting something more.
Well, we make content online, and that's all we do. That's not the ideal way to make money online, I don't think.
That's right. We've talked a lot about creating online content for other people to look at. That's what we do. But there are other options for online employment.
I don't know if that's an option.
Not to jump off tomorrow, because you're right, you have to build it. But I really think when you're trying to pivot, make major lifestyle changes, gradual is better.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can adjust more.
If you think you're going to make a living online creating content,
exactly,
that's a gradual process. Because I mean, I love making videos, and I made videos for years and years and years and didn't make anything because you don't make anything. It takes a long time just to do that kind of stuff and make money. I mean, we make some money online with our videos because we've got 800 videos, and most of those don't make anything. That's not a way to go.
I'm just talking about, because there's a lot of people that might hem and haw like I do. You don't make a decision, you jump out. Where you did. You made a decision and you jumped out right away. But there's also a lot of part-time online work that you can start. You know, there's all kinds of places now where you can do freelance work, and we'll put some links to Fiverr and Upwork and Freelancer, and there's a whole bunch. But again, you got to build up your own reputation.
Yeah, you have to have some kind of skill.
Well, yeah, you got to look into that and look at what's already up there and see if there's something you can provide. But so that's another way is freelance work. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people are way ahead, but there was a new word that came out several years back, but gig economy, which is just about, according to Oxford Languages, a labor market characterized by the prevalence of short-term contracts or freelance work as opposed to permanent jobs.
So it's a gig economy, like a gig, like a musical gig.
Exactly.
See, I never understood that because I always thought gig economy had something to do with gigabytes.
Oh.
But the gig economy they're saying it's just like a one-off.
Yes. And of course, companies, you know, some of the things people talk about as companies like it because they don't have to pay benefits depending on what you're doing. But anyway, according to balancecareers.com, an estimated 36% of American workers currently are part of the gig economy. And you know, before I left my last government job, they had transferred from a salaried position to a contract position. Now they, in theory, upped my salary to make a difference for the benefits I was losing. And the only reason I did it was because I knew we had an eye toward leaving at some point. Part-time work is another way you can sort of pivot. And again, sometimes it's voluntary.
So I've been part of the gig economy for 30 years.
Yes, you have. Yeah, you're a gig economy.
That's it. I was one of the original digital nomads because I traveled everywhere with all of my fingers to work.
Well, actually, in digital nomad, I think I said this in a previous podcast, that to me was a mystical concept. And now I get it. It's just trying to put things together, still with some stability. Investopedia says a digital nomad are people who are location independent and use technology to perform their jobs, living a nomadic lifestyle.
So we're digital nomads.
We are. When do you think that term became popular?
I bet it became popular in 2017.
You know, that's what I thought. 1997 in a book called The Digital Nomad, written by Tsugio, Tsugio.
Wow. Tsugio was very
and
prophetic.
and David Manners. But anyway,
because they weren't no digital nomads then. In 1997, you couldn't do jack. What could you do on the computer in 1997?
I was a little surprised about that too, because I think it's interesting. But anyway, so you're trying to make an employment change. Another thing you can change, I'm going to talk about something different, is lodging. Good boy. Good boy. Another thing when you're trying to change employment is looking at your lodging situation. And I know you're like, duh, but I think you can take a hard look at it. I mean, sometimes it's just getting roommates. Again, you and I both got a roommate, each other, that you can share costs with. House and pet sitting, we've definitely talked about that enough. But, hostels, moving to countries where your money goes longer. I mean,
hostels? You can't live long-term in a hostel.
You can't live long-term, but if you're going to have a nomadic lifestyle, hostels will help you keep your lodging.
I kind of thought about living long-term in a hostel in Seattle. I stayed at the Green Tortoise Hostel it might have been for 3 weeks.
Oh.
I thought I'd go back because they allowed longer-term lodging there in the wintertime. But that was years ago. You can figure out a lot about a city by being in a hostel. But that's super-duper short-term. And that's definitely for a younger set of people. Something that I didn't realize is that you can go to a different part of the world and teach English.
Right.
But then you have to have, a lot of times you need certification, and you do need some proof of college for that.
If you are trying to pivot your lifestyle, I think for most of us, a gradual pivot is more advantageous. Then again, there are mavericks, there are people who just jump with both feet and they make it work and they keep swimming, and you've done a little bit of that, but I think gradual can just give you more, it's less jarring, so it can give you more time to keep an equilibrium as you move through things.
It doesn't have to be gradual, depending on what your situation is. If you're a single person, I was going to say if you were younger, but it doesn't even matter if you're younger. If all you have is yourself, then it's very easy. If you have a couple, it can be easy too, as long as you're in agreement. If you're a family, I have no idea. But a lot of jobs that I've had are resort seasonal jobs.
That's true.
In different parts of the country. So you can instantly change your life by changing your location and going somewhere. But again, it's seasonal work. So it's working in resorts. A lot of it has to do with the weather. People travel to Florida in the wintertime, so it's easier to get a job in the wintertime in Florida. People go to Alaska in the summer, so it's easier to get a job in Alaska in the summer. And because these are seasonal places, there's a lot of work there, and then there's not. So it's just seasonal. So you can go for a time and work somewhere, and then you have to go somewhere else and work somewhere else. So you can drastically change your life instantaneously by following that path, which I did a lot when I was younger. I did it, just in books that I found at the library, founding resort jobs. But then with the advent of the internet, then it became glaringly obvious to find these jobs. And one of the sites that I use is coolworks.com, which was a site I used for quite a few years for finding work. Or just packing up your bag and going somewhere. And then when you get somewhere, you figure it out. That sounds vague, but it's not that much to figure out. You just got to find a job and a place to live.
Having two people that are willing to have some income coming in, to me that made it easier than, like you say, you jumped off by yourself. Me jumping off by myself, I was more adverse to that. But both of us working part-time, even making, $15, $16 an hour.
You mean in
we
Seattle?
Could make it work. We could make it work, two people, so that we had the balance. We weren't working a million hours.
But we were living very frugally.
Yes, we were.
Our apartment in Seattle was very expensive.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Our apartment in Seattle, when we first started, was $1,100 a month, and then I think it went up to what, $1,350 or $1,450?
Yes.
So not expensive for Seattle, but that's very expensive for a lot of places around the country.
Oh, okay.
So if you say that's not expensive, that's super duper expensive.
No, I understand what you're saying now, and it was very small.
For our location, it was a prize.
Oh, it was.
So we were living in the heart of the city, but we were paying less than a lot of people. And there was two of us in the small room. We didn't have a car payment.
Right.
We didn't have any bills outside of rent and utilities.
Well, yeah, we did, because that was another
Besides
luxury. No, the other luxury that you wanted us to get rid of was the car. We had insurance because we paid for parking.
Yeah, I wanted to get rid of the car. The moment
At
we got
that
to
point,
Seattle, I wanted to get rid of the car. And we kept that car the entire time we were in Seattle. We very rarely used it. And then 6 months after we left Seattle, that car was kaput because somebody ran into it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But that car also enabled us to fall into house sitting.
Yeah, it did.
Because we got house sits just outside of Seattle and in Portland. The house sit that we just talked about last week in Ucluelet.
Right.
We wouldn't have been able to get without a car. The house that we're at right now, we wouldn't be able to get without a car.
But yes, there was another difference of opinion we had. So there's not one way to do it. So you want to be open.
That car was old. It was getting older while we were in Seattle. And
Aren't
when
we
we
all?
left Seattle, it was older.
Yeah.
But it was in great shape. But it was paid for. And then when we got hit and our car was totaled, we just bought another car. I think the insurance paid out $7,000.
Something like that.
And we took that $7,000 and we bought a car for $5,500. So we lost our car, but we got another car and we pocketed $1,500.
It didn't have cruise control.
Yeah, it wasn't a great car. I mean, it's a functional car, but that's the thing. We live our life as frugally as we can so that we have money to do what we want to do. We don't put it into material possessions because with the budget that we're working at, that's not an option. If we were to spend all our money on stuff, then we would not be able to travel and have the experiences that we're having. When we were in Seattle, we had a very nice apartment full of all the things that we needed, but everything we got at thrift stores with the idea that when
Except
we
the
left,
mattress.
we were going to abandon it all and return it to the thrift store. It was all temporary. We weren't acquiring things that were going to hold us down. Yeah, we bought the mattress new. We spent like $400 on that, which is probably cheap for a mattress, but it was like, it seemed like a lot to me. At that time, how old was I? I was in my mid-40s.
Mentally, you were probably 70, curmudgeon.
I was in my mid-40s was the first time in my life I bought a new mattress. And I wasn't thrilled about that, but we did. But you know what?
It's one of those times you didn't wear me down.
Now you can get a mattress in the mail for like $200 and come and that's what your mother has, and that's what we've been sleeping
In their
on.
dollhouse. That's
so
right.
Next time we would do that. We wouldn't go buy a $400 mattress.
No, I do not know that either, but that's interesting.
I have
But
a feeling.
I have a feeling too. But I think another couple of things to keep in mind are keep curious and open about your physical well-being and your financial well-being. Like physically, we both do a little more Qigong. I'm more into yoga than I was probably 40 years ago. I like Yoga with Adriene as an online inspiration.
That might be something that folks have noticed because our cooking channel has gotten healthier, I think, over the last couple of years, and certainly in the past year, because like you said, you have to think about your finances, but you have to think about your health too, because your health,
Right. That's your biggest asset.
that can become a financial burden. So we're trying to minimize the costs of growing older physically.
But also with finances, you might think that it's all dry, and I'll put a link to some different places, but like there's a site, MrMoneyMustache.com or MadFientist.com, that just go there, pick an article that might interest you, whatever you're thinking about, skim it, but just putting a little bit of effort into finances. And I realize, Buck, you don't do that.
I like Mr.
Generally-
Money's mustache. I've looked at some of his stuff.
I thought I had sent you a few things.
And it's kind of interesting. You can be smarter. And I remember one time I bought a couple of a vacuum for their wedding.
Why, yes, you did.
I paid
Did
for
a
that
wicker-
vacuum for about 5 years
Oh.
because I just paid minimum on credit cards. I always had credit card debt when I was younger, and I never have credit card debt now. But when I was younger, it was just, I don't know, I wasn't thinking very smart, so I wasted a little bit of money.
I guess that's the takeaway message is, you're trying to look at how you make your money. Don't be afraid to make some mistakes. What was that?
Summarize what your point was with
Why
this.
don't you summarize it for us?
I don't know. I'm going to try to edit it and see, but this will help if you can tell me.
We just wanted to do a podcast looking at voluntary job changes. If you're thinking about changing jobs, yes, it's scary to most of us. And I think it just comes back to being clear with yourself on what's really important to you. You know what I didn't ask you? Because, we talk so much on the podcast about being practical and making sure, we do, our mantra of living within our means is big. Mm-hmm. But what is, if I said, what's a lavish lifestyle to you? What would that mean to you, living a lavish lifestyle?
I feel like I live a lavish lifestyle.
And what does it look like?
A lavish lifestyle means that I have a lot of options.
See, I was thinking the same thing. For me, it is the freedom. Like when we went to South America and we were expecting the 6-week house sit to be a jump off for 1 or 2 years of travel. I think the fact that we had the freedom to be able to make the change in plans, come back to the U.S. is lavish. When we can be available to do the things we want to do, if we want to have a fancy meal, we're fortunate because we like to cook. Mm-hmm. But
we go out and have fancy meals too.
Yeah, we do.
Because that's what we spend our money on. We don't spend it on other things.
Well, we spend it on coffee.
Yeah. We go to coffee shops.
Hopefully not as many pastries.
I mean, our budget, I think we try to live between $3,000 and $5,000 a month.
I think that's
fair. Is our budget. Fair. The more $3,000 months we have, that's good. Because sometimes we'll have a $5,000 month, and that's not good. That's way out of our budget with where we're at right now. But if we can go, we can have more expensive months if we have cheap months. Like here, we're house sitting. It's going to end up being 2 months here. So we're literally spending just a few $100s a month.
Right.
For these few months, so that when we have a more expensive month, it'll even out to where it's, $3,000 a month, $3,000 to $4,000 a month. Some of those months are cheaper. Some of them are more expensive, but they're all, it evens out over the course of the year.
It does.
So you just got to stay in that budget, and a lavish lifestyle comes, for me, from just the idea of being able to do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. Because if we actually had a house that we lived at all the time, that was very nice. If we actually had a car, that was kind of nice. If we had nice things, you could look at it and you could say, you're living a lavish lifestyle. But I wouldn't feel that was a lavish lifestyle. I would feel trapped because
not if you're trying to live at $3,000 and $5,000 a month.
I would have to work to maintain that, which to me doesn't feel lavish. For me, the idea of a lavish lifestyle equates to freedom.
I agree.
If I have to work to maintain it, then it feels like a job.
But I think that is key. If you're thinking about job changes, you have to really get clear about the reason why I asked you that. If you're thinking about changing jobs, what's really connected is you figuring out what's important to you. And I think COVID, again, what brought it into my mind, caused a lot of people to do that soul searching, was to reevaluate, this is what I think is important, but this is what's going on in 95% of my hours. So if you're looking at a job change, look at why, I did not hate my job. I didn't like my balance. I didn't like working 70, 80, 90 hours a week.
You did work some crazy hours when we first got together. Took me several years to fix her.
That's what he likes to say. And on that note, if you have any inkling that you might want to change jobs, think about why and some steps you can take to go that direction. May not happen tomorrow, may happen tomorrow. You never know. We have appreciated hearing other people talk about their job journey. Like you said, you don't want to think of it as a job. You don't have any problem doing work, which neither of us do, but you don't want to.
I worked a lot when I was younger, and for a long time I felt like I was working all the time. And I think the last time I really worked was around 2000. I don't feel like I really had a job in about 20 some years because I feel like I've done stuff that I wanted to do. Before that, I felt like I was working, and something clicked in my head, and I was still working, but I didn't feel like I was working because I felt like it was just part of my lifestyle, and it didn't feel like a job that I had to do. It felt like something that I was doing that would enable me to have these experiences. Although I was working, I was working at a hotel restaurant in New Orleans part-time. So it didn't feel like a job that last time I was working in New Orleans because I had such a rich life outside of that. And that became fun because it wasn't all encompassing.
Right.
And when I was working in Seattle, I enjoyed the job that I had there. I was cooking in Seattle, but it was fun. And sometimes I would work too much, and then it would become less fun, and then it felt like work, and then I would say, no, I don't want to do this because that's, I've done that in the past. If it becomes a job, if it becomes something I don't want to do, then I'm doing it wrong.
But every now and again, it's okay if for a few weeks or a few days, you have to work a few hours. Neither of us has ever been afraid of that.
I'm afraid of it now. I don't ever want to work again.
Yeah.
I got to figure out how to juggle my balls.
Oh.
So that I'm.
On that note, we'll end it.
Okay, there you have it. Figure out, how many balls you have and start practicing.
Until next time.
I'm Buck.
I'm Camera Girl.
And we'll see you next time on the Slowpoke Travel Podcast. But let me end with another quick commercial. Thanks for listening. Like I said, we got a Patreon account and we got a PayPal account. So if you like our videos, if you like our podcasts, if you like the stuff that we do online, we just explained to you why we need money to maintain that. No. We're trying to create revenue streams. We got all these little revenue streams and we need them to flow together into a mighty river that will become a steak dinner at some point. Although we don't eat steak nearly as much anymore.
But we also appreciate people just engaging in what we put online.
Exactly.
And commenting.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I agree with that. But buy us a cup of coffee if you want to.
If you want to.
And we'll see you next time on the Slowpoke Travel Podcast.
All right, I don't want to do this waving again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty, that is it. If you enjoyed it, click, subscribe, review, share all over the global internet sphere. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time on the Slowpoke Travel Podcast.